Lester Brickman, of course, is the leading critic in the country of contingency fees. And he's put together a book which he's now starting to market to publishers, and we were talking about it. And I cut in and I said, but have you talked to Tim Litton, because you needed contingency fees to bring these lawsuits? And he said, well, I've worked it out, and I've worked it out, and the thing I concluded is it's the only area where it's good. So he's willing to say contingency is okay if you're helping children. I was brought into this universe as originally I was working on issues involving religious groups breaking the law, which is an odd thing to be doing, but I was, largely focused on medical neglect cases and on cases involving abuse at camps in religious settings. But when I published my first column on this issue, one of the litigators in the field called me and said, he just had to say thank you because I was the only law professor who had ever taken their side. And he'd been working in the field for 25 years. And I was really struck by that no other law professors thought it was worth paying attention to. And so I started to advise them on constitutional issues, First Amendment issues, because of course the church has always raised the First Amendment, as lame as it is as a defense to what they're doing. And I thought this would be a very short foray because I got involved in the cases and it became absolutely clear what the problem was. The statute of limitations was shutting out 99% of the cases. And if you couldn't be in court, you couldn't force either the secrets to come out or damages to be paid. And so my theory was, okay, then let's get rid of the statute of limitations. And California got rid of the statute of limitations for the year in 2003. And 1,000 victims came forward. We learned the identities of 300 perpetrators that had never been named in public before. And so it seemed to me that this was one of those things that was a no-brainer, and so I was more than willing to be involved in helping to get the ball rolling, but then I was going to get back to more important endeavors. So the legislation was introduced in Ohio. And Ohio considered opening a window in which there'd be no statute of limitations for a year, and it passed the Senate unanimously. There was not a dry eye in the House. Everybody was hugging everybody. I happened to be there that day. And then it went over to the House. And that's when the bishops started to work their hardest. The bishops of Ohio successfully killed that bill on statute of limitations. And the hundreds of victims that had been working the legislation were absolutely devastated. Right? They, along with me, we were totally convinced this was no-brainer legislation, get rid of the statute of limitations, help child abuse victims, what a great idea. But the powers that be had been determined and successful in killing the legislation. So then the thought was, well, maybe it's just Ohio. So I got a call that Colorado was considering similar legislation. Now, Colorado is one of those states where if you're going to do anything involving religion, if it's not in favor of religion, you might as well just go home. And so my advice was, let's just give up in Colorado and let's stay home and let's go to a state where we might have a chance. No, we were going to try in Colorado. Well, the bishops not only were successful in Colorado in stopping this basic, fundamental legislative reform, but they came up with several new theories for stopping the movement. And the theory that the public relations firm came up with in Colorado was the following. You can't create a law that takes away the statute of limitations for a year or 2 years and lets everybody go to court who was abused, because that's really a law that's just aimed at the Catholic Church, number one, and that's not fair. And secondly, that's the kind of law that is unfair because it doesn't apply to public groups. And so they tried those two different tactics, and they put postcards in the seats of every parishioner on Sundays, and they said, fill out the card, this is the name of your representative in your area, and send it in saying, kill this bill. Do not change the statute of limitations in Colorado for child sex abuse victims. And it worked. It was brilliant. in terms of public relations and in terms of public policy, you have to give them credit for a brilliant strategy despite its inherent evil. So then Delaware comes along, and Matt Conady is here, and the little state of Delaware, the little engine that actually did create a window of possibility for victims to go to court, 2007 to 2009. So we're in the middle of an opportunity for victims in Delaware to go forward, even if they would have been shut out of court as of the date that this bill was passed in 2007. But Delaware didn't just do that. They also eliminated completely the statute of limitations on all civil and all criminal cases. And so Delaware is now the single best state in the country in opening their courthouse doors to victims. And they have had a number come forward. But there is a sincere fear that the barriers to coming forward are so horrendous that it's going to take a lot to get even a decent percentage of them to come forward in the time they need to. And so now Delaware is involved in a very aggressive public education campaign saying that if you were abused as a child, you need to come forward now. And hopefully they will pull in as many of the victims as possibly can stand to be in court.